I made $10 million from a small cafe to a big franchise. But my father chose my lazy sister as CEO. The first time I brewed coffee for a stranger was the day I truly felt alive. It wasn't fancy, just a pour-over in a chipped mug I'd found at a thrift store, but the woman's eyes lit up as she took her first sip. "This is remarkable," she said, the steam fogging her glasses. "What did you put in it?" "Just care," I told her, though the truth involved precise water temperature, freshly ground single-origin beans, and timing I'd practiced for months. That moment, standing in the empty storefront with exposed brick and secondhand furniture, was when I knew Luna and Bean would work. Had to work. I'd signed the lease 3 weeks earlier, draining my savings account to secure the tiny corner space on Main Street that smelled perpetually of the Chinese restaurant next door. The location wasn't prime, 2 blocks past where the nice part of downtown ended, but the rent was just within reach if I lived on ramen and worked every hour the cafe was open. "You're making a mistake, Olivia," my father had said over Sunday dinner the night before I signed. Richard Bennett never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His disapproval carried weight without volume. Food service has the highest failure rate of any business. The margins are terrible. My sister Madison nodded in agreement, though her experience with coffee was limited to ordering complicated drinks with extra whipped cream. At 23, 2 years my junior, she'd already secured a marketing job at my father's investment firm straight out of college. "I've done my research, Dad," I said, pushing peas around my plate. "And I've been saving for 3 years." He set down his fork with surgical precision. "You have a business degree from Georgetown. You could walk into any corporate job tomorrow." "I don't want a corporate job. What you want and what makes sense aren't always the same thing." My mother, silent through most of these exchanges, reached for the wine. She'd given up mediating between my father and me years ago. When the dinner plates were cleared, my father called me into his study, a room of leather-bound books and awards for financial excellence. He closed the heavy oak door behind us. "I don't approve of this cafe nonsense," he said, settling behind his desk. "But I also don't want to see you fail." He opened a drawer and removed a checkbook. "I'm prepared to offer you a small loan. $20,000. Enough to properly equip your little shop." I stared at the checkbook, surprised. My father had never offered financial support for any of my independent ventures before. "Why now?" "Because you're determined to do this regardless of my advice. Better you do it with proper backing than on a shoestring. There's no success in struggle, Olivia." The check he wrote had more zeros than I'd ever seen on a piece of paper with my name on it. I took it with trembling fingers. "This isn't charity," he clarified. "It's a business arrangement. I'll have papers drawn up. Low interest, reasonable terms." "Thank you," I said, emotion catching in my throat. Perhaps he believed in me after all. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just don't make me regret it." 3 days later, I signed the paperwork his assistant delivered without reading beyond the payment schedule. My mind was already filled with coffee bean suppliers and equipment catalogs. I tucked the substantial legal document into a folder where it would remain untouched for years. The borrowed money transformed Luna and Bean from a desperate dream into something with potential. I upgraded from the rusty espresso machine I'd bought on Craigslist to commercial-grade equipment. I hired Elijah, a barista with tattoo sleeves and 5 years' experience, to help me develop a signature menu. I printed real business cards instead of the ones I'd been making at the library. When we opened officially, a line stretched around the block. Friends, acquaintances, and curious locals drawn by the simple, free coffee, chalkboard sign I'd placed outside. By noon, we'd run out of cups. By closing, we'd sold every pastry, sandwich, and bean bag on the premises. "Not bad," Elijah said as we counted the register. "Not bad at all." I allowed myself a moment of pure, unrestrained joy. This was mine. I'd built this. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Congratulations on day 1. Expect this honeymoon period to end in approximately 3 weeks when the novelty wears off. That's when the real work begins." I didn't respond. The man couldn't help himself. But the novelty didn't wear off. If anything, business accelerated. Local office workers became regulars. A food blogger wrote about our lavender honey latte. A reporter from the city magazine stopped by to interview me about being a young female entrepreneur. 6 months in, we were profitable. At 8 months, I was scouting locations for a second shop. By the 1-year mark, Luna and Bean had 3 locations and a feature in Food and Drink Quarterly. My recipe journal, once filled with hopeful scribbles, now contained the formulas for success that were being replicated across the city. My father, to my surprise, showed up at our anniversary celebration. "I appear to have underestimated you," he said, inspecting the crowded cafe with the critical eye of someone appraising property. "Though, I suppose my investment helped." "It did," I acknowledged, swallowing my pride. "Thank you for believing in me." He laughed, a sound rarely heard in our household growing up. "I didn't believe in you, Olivia. I believed in the value of the commercial property you were leasing. But now..." He gestured to the bustling space. "Now I believe in this." That night, as I turned the sign to closed and dimmed the lights, I felt a peculiar mix of pride and unease. I had proven my father wrong, which was satisfying, but his approval, so long denied, now felt like a spotlight I wasn't sure I wanted. What did Richard Bennett see when he looked at Luna and Bean? Was it my achievement, or was it an opportunity? I pushed the thought away as I locked the door. This was just the beginning. I had no idea then how right I was or how wrong things would go. The expansion happened faster than I could have dreamed. 5 stores became 10 within 18 months. Each new location carried the Luna and Bean signature, exposed brick, reclaimed wood tables, and that perfect balance of cozy yet modern that customers couldn't seem to resist. But with growth came complications I hadn't anticipated. "We need to standardize," I told my team during our Monday morning meeting. We'd taken over the back room of the flagship store, laptops open, steam rising from our own special blends. "Every location needs to deliver the same experience." Elijah, now my operations manager, nodded. "Quality control is becoming an issue. I can't be everywhere at once." "None of us can," I agreed, rubbing my temples. I hadn't slept more than 5 hours a night in weeks. "That's why we need systems." Systems became my obsession. I developed training manuals, sourcing protocols, and quality benchmarks that would ensure a Luna and Bean latte in the financial district tasted identical to one served near the university. My recipe journal evolved into a detailed digital database, accessible to all location managers, but password protected against modifications. I'd learned that consistency was as important as quality. My father called these scaling pains and seemed almost pleased when I mentioned them during our now regular coffee meetings. "This is normal," he assured me, sipping the Ethiopian blend I'd created. "Every successful business hits this wall. The question is whether you'll break through or bounce off." I was determined to break through. I hired a full administrative team, leased office space above our 3rd location, and started thinking about regional expansion. Luna and Bean was becoming a recognizable brand, not just locally, but in industry publications and social media. Our distinctive Moon and Coffee Bean logo started appearing on reusable cups carried by influencers and business professionals alike. That's when Madison suddenly developed an interest in my work. She breezed into my office one Tuesday afternoon without knocking, designer handbags swinging from her elbow. "Olive, this place is actually cute." I looked up from the supplier contracts I'd been reviewing. "Thanks, I think." "No, seriously." She perched on the edge of my desk, disrupting a stack of invoices. "You've created something with real potential here." Coming from Madison, this was high praise. My sister had spent most of her life perfecting the art of backhanded compliments. "What brings you by?" I asked, saving the spreadsheet I'd been working on. "Madison didn't make social calls, especially not to my workplace. Dad mentioned you're looking to expand the brand. I thought I might help." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her Instagram. "I've got connections. Influencers, content creators, people who could really amplify Luna and Bean." I studied her face, searching for the catch. Madison and I had never been close, our relationship strained by our father's obvious favoritism and our fundamentally different approaches to life. Where I valued independence and building something with my own hands, Madison had always focused on appearance and leveraging connections. "What kind of help are we talking about?" I asked cautiously. "Social media partnerships, brand deals. The works." She flipped her phone around to show me her own Instagram profile with its impressive follower count. I could be the face of the brand, the Luna to your bean. She laughed at her own joke. "I'm not sure that's necessary." "Look at these numbers," she interrupted, pulling up analytics I couldn't quite follow. "Your current social media presence is quaint. With my network, we could quadruple your visibility within months." I hesitated. Madison's offer wasn't entirely without merit. Our marketing efforts had been organic and minimal. I'd focused on product quality and customer experience over promotional campaigns. But with 20 locations and plans for more, perhaps a stronger digital strategy made sense. "I'll think about it," I finally said. She rolled her eyes. "Don't overthink it, Olive. That's always been your problem. Sometimes you need to just jump." Within a week, Madison had somehow positioned herself as our brand ambassador, a title she created and my father enthusiastically endorsed over our standing Saturday breakfast. "Madison's social currency is valuable," he explained between bites of his usual steel-cut oatmeal. "And she's bringing it to Luna and Bean for practically nothing. You should be grateful." Grateful that she's posting pictures of herself with our products after years of having no interest in my business? My father's expression hardened. "Don't be petty, Olivia. Your sister is utilizing her strengths to help the company grow, just as you utilize yours." And grow it did. Madison's perfectly curated posts featuring our seasonal drinks and artisanal pastries garnered attention from local celebrities and national publications. Our online following tripled within months. New customers flocked to locations just to recreate Madison's Instagram photos. But something felt off. In team meetings, Madison started making suggestions that undermined my vision, proposing flashy, Instagram-ready drinks that sacrificed quality for appearance, suggesting aesthetic changes to our stores that went against the warm, authentic atmosphere I'd carefully cultivated. "People don't want authentic anymore," she insisted when I pushed back. "They want an experience they can photograph." My father sided with her every time. "Madison has her finger on the pulse of what's current," he'd say. "You built the foundation, Olivia. Let her help you modernize." It stung. This implication that my creation needed Madison's touch to remain relevant. Worse were the moments I'd overhear her on calls, referring to Luna and Bean as our family business, or the company my sister and I built. Elijah noticed my frustration one evening as we closed the flagship store. "You know," he said carefully, "your sister's been meeting with your dad and some suits after hours here sometimes." My stomach dropped. "What kind of suits?" "Corporate types. They had portfolio folders." "I assumed you knew." I didn't. And that night, searching through the company email server, I discovered calendar invitations to strategy meetings I hadn't been copied on. Meetings between Madison, my father, and representatives from a restaurant group known for acquiring promising local chains and expanding them nationally. The ghost of doubt that had been haunting me solidified into something tangible and threatening. I'd been so focused on building my dream that I hadn't noticed the shadows gathering around it, or the hands reaching to take what I created. The morning began like any other. Espresso at 5 a.m., conference call with suppliers at 6, store visits at 7:30. I'd perfected a routine that allowed me to keep tabs on all 32 Luna and Bean locations while still developing our seasonal menu and overseeing quality control. My calendar that Tuesday showed a 2 p.m. strategy meeting at corporate headquarters, the downtown office space we'd moved into 6 months earlier when our operations outgrew the small room above the original cafe. "Quarterly review?" Elijah asked as we walked through the production facility where we roasted our signature beans. "Something like that," I replied, frowning at the vague meeting description. "Dad set it up. Probably wants to go over the expansion numbers again." Elijah hesitated. "You want me there?" "Always," I said, grateful for his loyalty. In the 4 years since Luna and Bean's inception, Elijah had become more than an employee. He was my right hand, the person who understood both the business and my vision for it. We arrived at headquarters early. The reception area, designed with the same rustic meets modern aesthetic as our cafes, was unusually busy. Men and women in tailored suits clustered near the conference room, voices low. "Did we schedule interviews today?" I whispered to Elijah. He shook his head, expression darkening. "Those aren't job candidates." Before I could ask for clarification, Madison emerged from the conference room, wearing a sleek black dress I'd never seen and a confidence that made my skin prickle. Olive, just in time. Her smile was bright, but didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone's waiting." "Everyone who?" I asked, following her toward the conference room. "What's this meeting actually about?" Madison patted my shoulder like I was a child. "Dad will explain everything." The conference room, my conference room in my company's headquarters, had transformed. The large wooden table was surrounded by unfamiliar faces, leather portfolios open, water glasses at each setting as if prepared for a formal presentation. My father sat at the head of the table, where I usually sat. "Ah, Olivia," he said, gesturing to an empty chair halfway down the table. "Not at the head. Not even near it. Please join us." I remained standing, Elijah a solid presence behind me. "What's going on?" My father sighed, that familiar sound of disappointment I'd heard throughout childhood. "This would be easier if you'd just sit down." "I'll stand," I insisted. "Who are these people, and why are they in my company's conference room?" A woman in a charcoal suit stood and extended her hand. "Frances Hartley, legal counsel for Bennett Investment Group. We've met before, at your father's holiday party." I didn't take her hand. "Why is my father's legal counsel at my business meeting?" "Olivia," my father's voice took on the edge it always did when he felt I was being difficult. "Big has been a major investor in Luna and Bean from its inception. Ms. Hartley represents our interests." "Your interests?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "You gave me a loan. That doesn't make you a major investor." Frances Hartley exchanged a glance with my father before opening a folder. "Actually, according to the financing agreement you signed, Bennett Investment Group holds a 51% ownership stake in Luna and Bean Enterprises, with controlling interest provisions that activate upon reaching certain valuation thresholds." The room tilted slightly. "That's not possible. I never agreed to that." "You signed the loan documentation," she said, sliding a paper across the table. "Page 17, Section 4. Paragraph C specifically outlines the equity conversion terms." I snatched up the document, scanning the dense legal text until I found the section she referenced. There it was, buried in terminology I hadn't fully understood when I signed, a clause converting the loan to majority equity once the business reached a specific valuation. "You tricked me," I said, looking at my father. The betrayal cut deep, but part of me wasn't surprised. Richard Bennett had always played the long game. "I protected my investment," he corrected. "And it's a good thing I did. Luna and Bean has reached a critical juncture. The brand needs strategic leadership to capitalize on its current momentum." Madison stepped forward, sliding a glossy presentation folder toward me. "We've been approached by Nexus Hospitality Group. They're interested in acquiring Luna and Bean and scaling it nationally." I stared at her, comprehension dawning with sickening clarity. "And you've been helping orchestrate this." "Those meetings Elijah mentioned. You were shopping my company around behind my back." "Our company," Madison corrected. "And we weren't shopping it around. We were exploring strategic partnerships to maximize growth potential." My father cleared his throat. "The Nexus offer is exceptional, Olivia. They're prepared to retain you as a creative consultant to maintain the brand's authenticity while bringing in experienced executives to manage the expansion." "Creative consultant?" I nearly choked on the words. "You want to demote me to consultant in my own company?" "No one is using the word demote," Frances interjected smoothly. "Your role would evolve to focus on your strengths, menu development, brand identity, while leadership transitions to those with experience scaling national food service brands." My hands began to shake. And who exactly would be taking over as CEO during this transition? The momentary silence confirmed what I already knew before my father spoke. Madison has agreed to serve as interim chief executive officer, he announced, a hint of pride in his voice I'd rarely heard directed at me. Her background in marketing and her understanding of current consumer trends make her ideally positioned to guide Luna and Bean through this next phase. Madison beamed. It's the perfect solution, Olive. You keep doing the coffee magic, and I handle the business side. We'll be an unstoppable sister act. I looked around the table at these strangers who thought they could simply take what I'd built. My father, who had apparently planned this coup from the beginning, my sister, who had slid so effortlessly into a role she'd never earned, and the corporate lawyers who had drafted documents designed to strip me of my creation. This meeting is over, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Olivia, be reasonable, my father started.
No.
The word came out sharper than I intended. You don't get to tell me to be reasonable when you've orchestrated this entire situation. Everyone who doesn't work directly for Luna and Bean needs to leave this office immediately. Francis Hartley smiled thinly. Unfortunately, as representatives of the majority shareholder, we have every right to be here. Then I'll leave. I turned toward the door, Elijah still beside me. If you walk out now, my father called after me, you're only hurting yourself. The transition is happening with or without your cooperation. At least this way, you maintain some control over your legacy. I paused at the threshold, not turning around. Legacy? You think that's what I care about? I built Luna and Bean to create something authentic in a world full of corporate shortcuts and Instagram facades. If you think I'll help you turn it into just another soulless chain, you don't know me at all. Olivia, Madison started, but I was already walking away, Elijah close behind. Outside, the spring air felt thin and insufficient. I couldn't catch my breath. What just happened? Elijah asked, guiding me to a bench. They stole my company, I said, the reality of it sinking in. My father set me up from the beginning. He never believed in me. He just saw an opportunity to profit off my work. Elijah sat beside me, quiet support radiating from him as pedestrians streamed past, unaware that my world had just imploded. What will you do? He finally asked. I looked up at the Luna and Bean logo on the building. My logo, my dream, my life's work. I don't know yet, I admitted. But this isn't over. The following weeks passed in a blur of legal consultations and sleepless nights. I converted my apartment's dining room into a war room. Documents spread across every surface, coffee cups multiplying as I pored over years of paperwork I'd signed without proper scrutiny. The more I discovered, the more my stomach twisted with the realization of how thoroughly I'd been outmaneuvered. It's pretty airtight, said Naomi Chen, the attorney I'd hired with the last of my personal savings. She adjusted her glasses as she reviewed the original loan agreement for the 5th time. Your father's legal team knew exactly what they were doing. I paced the small space between stacks of papers. There has to be something we can use. Some loophole or technicality. The problem isn't just the majority stake, Naomi explained patiently. It's the layers of control built into these agreements. The operational authority clauses, the decision-making hierarchy, the intellectual property assignments, they're all designed to gradually transfer power away from you while making it seem like you remained in control. Intellectual property. I stopped pacing. What about the intellectual property? Naomi pulled out another document, this one from a folder I hadn't yet examined. This is concerning. According to this trademark registration, Luna and Bean's name, logo, and brand assets are owned by a separate LLC, Bennett Brand Holdings, not by Luna and Bean Enterprises. I never created a separate LLC, I said, confused. No, but your father did. She slid the paper toward me. And according to this licensing agreement you signed 3 years ago, you authorized Luna and Bean Enterprises to use intellectual property owned by Bennett Brand Holdings for a nominal fee. The memory surfaced, my father bringing papers to my office during the chaotic week we were opening our 5th location. Just some routine brand protection measures, he'd explained. Sign here and here. I've got my notary waiting in the car. I'd signed without reading. just like I always did when my father presented me with urgent paperwork. So you're telling me I don't even own the name of my own company? My voice cracked. Not legally, no. I sank into a chair, the magnitude of the deception overwhelming. What about my recipes? My process guides? The training manuals? Naomi flipped through more documents. The employee agreement you signed with Luna and Bean Enterprises includes a standard work-for-hire clause. Anything you created within the scope of your employment belongs to the company. But I created those before I ever had employees. Before there was a company. Did you date your original recipe journal? Do you have any proof of when specific recipes were developed? I thought about my journal, pages splattered with coffee stains, margins filled with notes, each recipe evolving over dozens of iterations. I never thought to date individual entries. Why would I? I never imagined I'd need to prove I created my own drinks. This is a nightmare, I whispered. There's more, Naomi said, her expression grave. Your employment contract as CEO includes a non-compete clause that would prevent you from opening another coffee shop or related business within 100 miles for 2 years if you're terminated or resign. The walls seem to close in. So they can fire me from my own company, use my recipes, my brand, everything I built, and I can't even start over? Not within the specified geographic area, no. I stood abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, life continued normally. People hurried down the street, many carrying Luna and Bean cups. My cup. My design. My coffee. None of them knew it wasn't mine anymore. Did Madison know? I asked more to myself than Naomi. Did she know about this plan from the beginning? The answer came the next day, not from legal documents, but from an unlikely source. Jess, one of our original baristas who now managed the flagship store, called me in tears. I didn't know who else to tell, she said, her voice shaking. Madison came in today with a corporate team. They're changing everything. The menu, the decor, even the music playlist you created. When I objected, she told me to get with the program or get out. I'm so sorry, Jess. That's not all. She lowered her voice. I overheard her on the phone in your old office. She was talking to your dad, saying something like phase 1 complete, just like we planned years ago. Olivia, I think they've been plotting this takeover for a long time. The betrayal, already deep, cut even deeper. Years ago, before Luna and Bean had multiple locations, before it was successful enough to be worth stealing. That night, I found myself outside my parents' house, the place I grew up but never quite belonged. I hadn't planned to come here, but something pulled me toward confrontation, or perhaps closure. The lights were on, silhouettes moving behind curtains. Friday night dinner, a tradition I'd been absent from since the boardroom ambush. I almost walked away. Then the front door opened, and Madison emerged, laughing over her shoulder at something our father said. She froze when she saw me standing on the sidewalk. Olive, what are you doing here? How long? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. How long have you and Dad been planning to take Luna and Bean from me? Madison glanced back toward the house, then stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her. You're being dramatic. Nobody took anything from you. Answer the question. She sighed, dropping the pretense. It was always the plan, Olive. Dad never thought your little coffee shop would amount to anything. The loan was his way of hedging his bets. If you failed, he'd write it off. If you succeeded, he'd steal it, I finished. He'd professionalize it, she corrected. You're a good barista, Olive. A creative person. But you were never meant to run a multi-million-dollar company. That was always going to be my role. And you were okay with that? With pretending to support me while waiting for the right moment to step in and take over? Madison shrugged, her lack of remorse stunning. It's business. Nothing personal. It's my life's work, I said. It couldn't be more personal. Well, it's mine now. Her smile was cold. And Dad's. Legally and officially. The contracts have all been updated, the leadership transition announced to stakeholders. You should check your email more often. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. A company-wide email from Madison Bennett, newly appointed CEO of Luna and Bean Enterprises, announcing a bold new direction for the brand. "By the way," Madison added, watching me read the email, "we'll need you to vacate your office by Monday. Nexus is sending their transition team, and we need the space." I looked up from my phone, seeing my sister clearly for perhaps the first time. Not as the shadow I'd grown up competing with, but as someone I fundamentally didn't know, and didn't want to. "You know what the worst part is?" I said finally. "It's not that you took my company. It's that you and Dad thought so little of what I built that you believed you could run it without understanding what makes it special." "Save the sentimentality," Madison replied. "Customers don't care who makes their coffee as long as it tastes good and looks good on Instagram." As she turned to go back inside, I called after her. "You're wrong. And you'll find out exactly how wrong soon enough." Walking away from my childhood home for what I knew would be the last time, I felt something unexpected beneath the anger and betrayal, a flicker of determination. They'd taken my company, my recipes, my brand. But they couldn't take my knowledge, my relationships, or my drive. For the first time since the boardroom ambush, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I didn't throw things or scream into pillows the way people do in movies when they've been wronged. Instead, I went quiet, a focused, deliberate kind of quiet that those who knew me best recognized as dangerous. For 3 days after confronting Madison, I spoke to no one, answered no calls, and stayed in my apartment with the blinds drawn. On the 4th day, I called Elijah. "I need your help," I said when he arrived, carrying breakfast I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. "But I won't be offended if you say no." Elijah set the food on the counter. "I already quit Luna and Bean. So did Jamie and Kira. Your sister's new direction involves replacing skilled baristas with minimum wage workers who can follow simplified recipes." I winced. "I'm sorry. I never meant for anyone else to be hurt by this." "Don't apologize," he said, unwrapping a bagel. "We're not victims. We're your team. Now tell me what you're planning." What I was planning was a phoenix, rising from ashes I hadn't expected to be standing in. I spent the next week making calls from a list I'd been quietly compiling, suppliers who'd worked with me since the beginning, customers whose orders I'd memorized, baristas who'd learned their craft under my guidance. I called in favors, arranged meetings in living rooms instead of boardrooms, and outlined a vision born not from the bitterness of betrayal, but from the passion that had driven me from the start. "You want to create a direct competitor to Luna and Bean?" asked Marco, our former bean supplier, during one such meeting. "Isn't there a non-compete in your contract?" "There is," I acknowledged. "I can't open another coffee shop within 100 miles. But Elijah can." All eyes turned to Elijah, who nodded. "On paper, I'll be the owner. In reality, we're building this together." "It's risky," said Jamie, who'd been our head of training. "Your father has resources we can't match." "True," I agreed. "But we have something they don't, authenticity, and knowledge of exactly how they operate." We found a location in the same neighborhood as the original Luna and Bean, a former bookstore with high ceilings and character that corporate designers couldn't replicate. With investments from 5 believers who'd seen my vision succeed once before, we secured the lease and began renovations. The non-compete prevented me from creating coffee drinks commercially, but it said nothing about developing recipes theoretically or for personal use. So I filled new journals with new ideas, testing them in my kitchen while Elijah and our core team handled the public-facing aspects of the business. We named it Ivy and Ember, a nod to growth that persists even after fire. 2 months after Madison took control of Luna and Bean, Ivy and Ember opened its doors without fanfare. We didn't need splashy marketing or influencer campaigns. We relied instead on text messages to loyal customers, whispered invitations, and the genuine excitement of everyone involved in building something meaningful. The response was immediate. Former Luna and Bean regulars appeared on opening day, many expressing relief at finding their coffee shop again. What they didn't know, what nobody outside our inner circle knew, was that I couldn't legally be employed there. I was a silent partner, a ghost consultant, a friend who sometimes hung out in the back office. Madison noticed the shift within weeks. Sales at the original Luna and Bean location dropped by 30%. Online reviews mentioned declining quality and atmosphere. Longtime employees continued to resign, many finding their way to Ivy and Ember's hiring events. They've implemented all the changes Nexus wanted, reported Kira, who still had friends at Luna and Bean Corporate. Cheaper ingredients, automated processes, standardized everything to the point where there's no room for craftsmanship. And the customers? I asked. They notice. Even if they can't pinpoint exactly what's different, they feel it. The confrontation I'd been expecting came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in a corner of Ivy and Ember, pretending to be a customer while actually making notes about the morning rush workflow when Madison walked in. She wore the tailored confidence of someone who believed money equaled power, but her expression betrayed uncertainty as she surveyed the packed cafe. She spotted me and made her way over, ignoring the stares of former Luna and Bean employees who recognized her. "Cute place," she said, not sitting down. "Interesting that it opened right after you were removed from Luna and Bean leadership." "Is it?" I kept my voice neutral. "I'm just a customer here. Don't insult my intelligence, Olive. This has your fingerprints all over it." She gestured around at the thoughtfully designed space, the handwritten menu boards, the baristas who moved with practiced precision. "The non-compete in your contract is legally binding. I'm aware. That's why I don't work here or own any part of this business. Feel free to check the paperwork." Madison's eyes narrowed. "You found a loophole." "I learned from the best," I replied. "You and Dad taught me how important the fine print can be." For a moment, I glimpsed something that might have been respect in her expression. Then it vanished, replaced by the cool calculation I'd come to recognize as her business face. "It doesn't matter," she said finally. "Nexus is rolling out an aggressive expansion plan. By this time next year, there will be Luna and Bean locations in 15 states. Your little revenge shop won't even register as competition." "This isn't about revenge," I said, meaning it. "It's about building something authentic again. Something that can't be stolen with legal trickery or corporate maneuvering." "Always so idealistic," Madison sighed. "That's why you'll never win against Dad. He plays to win, not to feel good about himself." After she left, Elijah brought over a fresh cup of our signature blend. "You okay?" "Better than okay," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. For the first time since this all started, I feel like I'm back on solid ground. As the weeks passed, Ivy and Ember flourished while Luna and Bean struggled with its identity crisis. Nexus pushed forward with aggressive national expansion, opening locations in airports and shopping centers across the country. But without the heart and soul that had made the original special, many of these new locations faltered. Madison appeared on business magazine covers, touted as the young female entrepreneur behind Luna and Bean's explosive growth strategy. Articles mentioned me only in passing, if at all, as the original founder who departed to pursue other interests. 6 months after opening Ivy and Ember, we had 3 locations, all profitable, all built on the principles of quality and community that had guided me from the beginning. We couldn't match Luna and Bean's size or market reach, but we didn't need to. We were building something different, something sustainable. The real vindication came not from business success, but from an unexpected source. One evening, as I was finally leaving after a long day of not working at Ivy and Ember, my father was waiting outside. "Impressive operation," he said, nodding toward the cafe. "Especially for something you have no official connection to." I met his gaze steadily. "What do you want, Dad?" To offer some advice. He straightened his tie, a nervous habit I'd rarely seen from him. "Madison is in over her head. Nexus is pressuring for faster returns. The quality issues are mounting. The brand is suffering. And this concerns me how." He hesitated, then said something I never thought I'd hear from Richard Bennett. "You were right. About Luna and Bean. About what made it special. We should have listened." I didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. Instead, I walked away, the fire they had sparked in me burning brighter than ever. 2 years passed like turning pages in a well-worn book, familiar yet revealing something new with each flip. Ivy and Ember grew to 12 locations, each one profitable, each one built on relationships rather than corporate spreadsheets. We expanded thoughtfully, never sacrificing quality for speed, never opening a new location until we were certain it would embody our values. I still kept up the pretense of being uninvolved, though everyone in the industry knew the truth. My non-compete had expired 6 months ago, but I maintained the arrangement with Elijah out of respect for what we'd built together. He wasn't just a figurehead. He'd become a true partner, bringing business acumen that complemented my creative vision. Luna and Bean's national expansion had faltered spectacularly. The Nexus strategy of rapid growth had backfired when customer complaints about inconsistent quality and soulless atmosphere began trending on social media. Madison appeared less frequently in business publications, and when she did, the headlines had shifted from celebratory to questioning. Luna and Bean, cautionary tale of expansion gone wrong? I was arranging fresh flowers at our newest location when the bell above the door jingled. Looking up, I saw my sister for the first time in months. She'd lost the polished corporate sheen, her designer outfit replaced by jeans and a simple blouse, her expression worn and tired. "Can we talk?" she asked, eyes darting around as if worried someone might recognize her. I nodded toward a quiet corner table. "Coffee, please." I brought over 2 cups of our seasonal blend and sat across from her. "I'm surprised to see you here." Madison wrapped her hands around the mug, but didn't drink. "Nexus is pulling out," she said without preamble. "They're invoking the performance clause in the acquisition agreement." Meaning they're walking away, leaving us with 37 underperforming locations and a brand that's becoming synonymous with disappointment. She finally took a sip, her eyebrows lifting slightly at the taste. "This is good." "I know," I said simply. "Luna and Bean is dying olive." The admission seemed to cost her something. Dad's investment firm has absorbed massive losses. The original locations are barely breaking even. We've lost the customer base that made the company special in the first place. I waited, sensing there was more. "Dad wants to talk to you. About a proposition." Of course he did. Richard Bennett never admitted defeat. He simply reframed the narrative. "What kind of proposition?" Madison looked down at her coffee. "A merger. Between Luna and Bean and Ivy and Ember." I couldn't help it. I laughed, the sound startling a nearby customer. "You can't be serious." "It makes business sense," she insisted. "Your brand has the customer loyalty and quality reputation. Ours has wider name recognition and established locations in key markets. And what would this merger look like?" "Let me guess. Dad maintains controlling interest?" Madison hesitated. "He's willing to negotiate." "No." The word came out firm, final. "I'm not interested in negotiations or deals or any arrangement that puts my creation back under his control." "This isn't about control," Madison argued. "It's about salvaging what's left of Luna and Bean." "That's not my problem." I stood up. "You and Dad took what I built. You changed it into something unrecognizable. You pushed out the people who made it special. And now that it's failing, you want me to save it. I'm trying to be reasonable here." "Reasonable?" I cut her off. "Was it reasonable when you plotted behind my back for years? When you used my recipes and my brand to advance your own career? When you showed up for the glory, but never for the 3 a.m. baking sessions or the supplier negotiations or the 1,000 small decisions that built Luna and Bean?" She flinched. "I made mistakes. We all did. But this is business, Olive. Sometimes you have to set aside personal feelings." "This was never just business to me," I said, quieter now. "That's what neither you nor Dad ever understood." Madison gathered her purse, defeated. "He said you'd say that. He also said to tell you he's sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild what he destroyed." After she left, I sat alone, watching the rhythm of the cafe, baristas moving with practiced efficiency, customers engaged in conversation, the community we'd fostered thriving around me. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Bennett Investment Group filing for bankruptcy protection. Thought you should know." The news should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the closing of a chapter one was ready to move beyond. A week later, I received official notice that Bennett Brand Holdings was liquidating its assets, including all intellectual property related to Luna and Bean Enterprises. The brand I'd created, the name I'd chosen, the logo I'd sketched on a napkin years ago, all up for auction to the highest bidder. I made one bid, not through lawyers or investment firms, but personally. I offered exactly what my father had loaned me to start the original Café, $20,000 for the name and logo of Luna and Bean. 3 days later, I received confirmation of my winning bid. No one else had wanted a tarnished brand associated with corporate failure. In my office at Ivy and Ember headquarters, I gathered our leadership team, Elijah, Jamie, Kira, and the others who'd stood by me through everything. I placed the trademark certificates on the table before them. Luna and Bean is ours now, I announced. Legally and officially. What are you planning to do with it? Jamie asked. I smiled. I thought we might open one location. The original spot on Main Street is vacant again. Run 2 separate brands? Elijah looked intrigued. That's ambitious. No, I clarified. One brand, Ivy and Ember. But I want to preserve what Luna and Bean was meant to be, a place where quality and community matter more than corporate expansion. A small reminder of where we started. 6 months later, we reopened the original Luna and Bean location as a specialty training center and experimental cafe under the Ivy and Ember umbrella. The sign still featured the moon and coffee bean logo, but beneath it, in smaller letters, an Ivy and Ember company, founded by Olivia Bennett. My father came to the soft opening. He stood outside for nearly 10 minutes before coming in, his once commanding presence diminished by financial failure and public humiliation. You've done well, he said, looking around at what I'd rebuilt. I have, I agreed. I should have trusted your vision. I handed him a cup of the original house blend, the first recipe I'd ever perfected. Yes, you should have. He took a sip, recognition flickering across his face. It tastes like the beginning. For me, it tastes like reclamation, I said. Everything in this building, every recipe, every design element, every business decision has my name on it now. Not just on paper, but in reality. My vision, my rules. As he left, I noticed the new sign by the register. The one I'd insisted on placing prominently where both customers and employees would see it daily. Built with my hands, protected by my name. It wasn't just a title anymore. It was a promise to myself that I would never again let anyone steal what I had created. And this time, I'd read every word of every contract to make sure of it.